Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and they're back with another Marvel Snap video. So, there have been some developments in the Kid Omega saga. Nothing from Second Dinner yet, not super surprising. It's the meme of everything on fire over there right now, I'm sure. But there have been some developments around this card which have been pretty amusing to see. So what's going on with Kid Omega, and how could this have possibly gotten any worse? Well, there is a way. Kid Omega is the card that was prophesized 2.5, actually 3 years ago back in beta. There was a little thing called Nexus events. You might know about these, you might have heard about these, but for the unaware, essentially Nexus events were loot boxes, and they were very gacha-esque, actually just pretty much full-on gacha. And that was how Second Dinner planned on initially releasing new cards into the game. It led to the biggest backlash I think the game has ever seen, and this was back when the game was still in beta, so it was a bit smaller of a community than post-global launch. But as someone who was there for it when it happened, it was one of the biggest controversies in the history of the game, bar none. And I'm not exaggerating when I say the situation around Kid Omega really is escalating to that level of controversy, except now the game is on a much bigger scale than it was back when it was in beta. There are a lot more people playing it now than there were then, even with the declining player base numbers. So what exactly do I mean when I say Kid Omega was the card that was prophesized way back 3 years ago in beta with Nexus events? Well, Jane Foster was the shiny new card you had to spend $100 or more to get via Nexus events back in the day, and Jane wasn't very good. Thor was a 4/6 at the time. Jane just wasn't really good enough to uplift him, even with the lower power level of the game. And so even though the card was bad, the big concern a lot of people had was, sure, Jane is bad now, but what happens when they release an OP card behind this massive paywall? And that really was the backbone of the argument of why so many people hated Nexus events, and it was Second Dinner going down a path that many players in the beta felt they could not follow as people who enjoyed card games rather than enjoying gacha games. That is the principle of the matter that made Nexus events just not something the community was willing to put up with, and Kid Omega 3 years later is living up to the concerns we had way back then. So I have not bought the card. I don't plan on buying the card. However, I've watched some people who have. I actually spent like 2-3 hours last night in a co-op session with someone who did have the card, and it is disgusting. It is just absurdly powerful. The win rate numbers I was seeing on this card in High Infinite are higher than I have maybe ever seen over some of these fairly larger samples. Now, there are some multiple factors to this, right? Nobody has Kid Omega really. It's kind of an optimal metagame for him right now, since nobody has him, nobody's teching against him. A lot of people are experimenting with new Nightmare stuff, and Kid Omega Nimrod stuff really farms Nightmare. It's crazy how much it farms Nightmare. So there are definitely some factors here that are making him probably a bit better on average than he will be if the larger player base had access to him and people can build around and tech against and that kind of thing. But what I took away in watching this gameplay and doing some of this co-op with this card is that it is absurdly strong. And it creates play patterns that I think have typically been very unpopular in the game, feeling very Hela-esque. I'll throw the deck up on screen here now. This is one KM threw together and played a bunch last night. I'm sure it could be further optimized, but it was just absolutely crushing people to an obscene degree. Frankly, Kid Omega could not gain the power from the card he destroys, and he would still be a huge core piece of this deck. You could make Kid Omega a 3-cost card, and I don't think it would nerf this deck in a meaningful way. At least from what I've seen so far, it feels like this card is leaps and bounds above previously other very OP cards, like Sam Wilson and Iron Patriot. That's crazy. Deciding to lock the first Series 6, effectively, premium card behind this massive paywall and then having it be an absurdly busted card is just, it's pretty much worst case scenario. There's no theorizing here about how bad this could be, but it's not actually that bad yet. It is that bad, and it's happening right now. And I'm sure some people are going to go out and buy this card because of this. And if things do not change, what is going to happen is a handful of people will get this card by the end of the event by spending money, whether they spend a lot of money to get it sooner or less money and use some more time to grind out high voltage by doing the quests and whatnot, is not the most relevant. The point is, a lot of people are not going to have this card. Very few people will have this card, and I think it is going to be a very meta-relevant card for those who do have it. It does some very, very strong things. Again, not unbeatable. I expect the win rate will probably go down as it becomes more of a known entity and maybe some people start targeting it. But just the raw power and what this card enables in terms of making this deck that looks like some really, bad fringe combo deck, it is remarkably consistent. It feels like you're playing Hela if Hela went taller and also got to run like a second copy of Hela. There are just like multiple different plans you can pivot to, so you're not all in on one plan, like doing the Nimrod stuff. You have the Black Panther stuff as backup. It just is surprisingly resilient. Like, you look at the deck and it looks a bit like a combo pile that's going to lose to itself a lot of the time. But in actually watching the game play out over numerous hours, that just isn't what happened. And it is really, really concerning. Because this is pretty much textbook what you do not want from a card like this. This is the best example of a just absurd pay-to-win card as I think you can get. And that makes it even more funny that they decided to nerf it pre-release from a 2-2 to a 2-1. Meanwhile, Nightmare went from a 2-2 to a 3-1. If anyone needed that treatment, it was probably Kid Omega, and I don't even think that would have really put a dent in what he is doing in this deck. It's actually just disgusting. And so when you think about it, all the frustration surrounding this card and this game mode and the shop and the monetization practices, all of this frustration was before we really knew any of the impact of the card, before really anyone was playing the card. And that frustration was at an all-time high. So the fact that he's being a textbook example of this just absurdly expensive pay-to-win card, I think is only going to add more fuel to the fire. And honestly, I really just don't have a lot of faith in Second Dinner to be able to put this fire out. They've also put themselves in a bit of a tricky situation because everyone's mad at them about this mode and about this card, right? However, there is a very small amount of people who, maybe even if they're still mad at them, are ponying up the cash to get the card. And if Second Dinner responds and is like, hey, we're making the card cheaper, or let's live in magical Christmas land where they give everyone the card for free, which, let's be honest, that's not happening on Ben Brode's watch, but let's say it did, all of a sudden, you have found a way to really piss off all the people who just spent $100 on your pay-to-win card. So no matter what happens here, I don't really think they're capable of rising to the moment of dealing with this level of controversy like they did back in the beta. But even if they are, they're still going to piss off a group of players that they value more highly than most because they're the whales. They're the people who are paying these crazy prices for the mobile game. Those are the people you want to piss off the least when you are a mobile gaming company. Now, if they did truly go through with a Nexus level compensation or rollback, they would refund what people spent and give everyone the card. Again, I think the odds of that happening, you're more likely to win the lottery than see that actually play out this way. But just for the sake of hypothetical, but really that's kind of the only out they have if they don't want to piss off either a very important group of players or the larger player base. I think whatever they do to lessen this, if they do anything, I don't know, we haven't heard anything, I don't think it's going to be nearly enough. I think this is a great example of something that they are just way too comfortable doing. And that's treating their player base like lab rats. And I think eventually people get kind of fed up. It gets very tiring with this company seeing how far they can push the limit of what they can do to make money. And it's them. It's always been them. One of the more common narratives that was going around and not just in the Snap space, but this happens in the general gaming space too, is a lot of the bad rap gets placed on the bigger corporate entity compared to the small, friendly indie developers. People want to like the indie devs. People want to root for the indie devs rather than, these large faceless corporations like Activision, Blizzard, EA, etc. And I covered this in the kind of in-depth breakdown I did about what Snap's publisher changing means for them and for us, the community surrounding the game. I talked about that quite a bit, how a lot of people are willing to kind of offload some of the responsibility onto Nuverse because it's easier to pin that on them, that Nuverse is the one being greedy, or Nuverse is the one taking too much of the pie, so Second Dinner has to up the prices more. When the reality is, I just don't think that is actually the case. And this is really the first moment kind of proving that post them jumping into the self-publishing space. There is no longer a Nuverse for someone to pin the blame on. The blame is pinned solely on the small indie developer. This is who they are. This is who they've always been. When they push a little bit too far, they try and do an about face and say, oh, we hear you guys, we're listening, we're sorry. But if you're really sorry, you wouldn't do it again. Actions speak louder than words, and I've seen this pattern enough to know it's not going to be the last time it happens. And I think at a certain point, it just gets tiring. The fun the game provides can only offset that so much, especially as the game gets older and the shine of it wears off, and we have more issues like all the bugs popping up and whatnot. It just becomes a lot harder to stomach. And all the stuff with Kid Omega and High Voltage I really think is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back for a lot of people. Even if they were to make the best response possible, I think this has done a level of damage that just will not be undone by that for some people. It really is that bad. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. And it sucks, but it's one in a long line of decisions by the people who make this game that are just very antagonistic towards the community surrounding it. And that really sucks for all of us in the community. It especially sucks for me personally, as someone who has, firmly planted my channel around this game. You might have noticed I don't post nearly as much YouTube stuff as I used to in the past. And that's because I think Second Dinner has done an abysmal job of supporting the community around this game. And it makes it really hard to actually kind of grow as a creator in this space. And this isn't a unique experience to me. I see it from other people all the time. People who put in a lot more time and effort than I do in trying to make, Snap content on YouTube work. And there just aren't enough people to make that work. And the reason there aren't enough people, it's not because the game isn't good. It's because of practices like this from Second Dinner. It makes the game inaccessible. It makes people feel negative towards the company and like they don't want to support it. And that naturally leads to a decay and resentment within the community around it. And the writing has been on the wall for a while that this is who Second Dinner is. I really wanted to believe that they were, actually taking a harder look at some of their incredibly stupid choices, and they finally maybe realized that what they were doing wasn't sustainable for the long term. But seeing what they've done with this mode, I don't believe they're in this for the long term. When Snap was still pretty new, a friend of mine said he gave this game a 5-year time frame based on seeing the prices they wanted to charge for new cards when Series 5s were first added into the game. At the time, I was much more optimistic about what this game could be, and that it would live on to be one of the great card games going on well beyond that 5 years. But as time has gone on more and more, it looks like that prediction is becoming very much accurate. It feels like Second Dinner is trying to juice this game for all they can before they move on to their next mobile money game printer, which, if you don't know, has been in development for a while. They're making a Match 3 game, which is like Candy Crush. They've been working on that for quite some time. No idea when it's going to come out. There's not too many details about it, but with decisions like this in Snap, it just feels more and more like they're trying to squeeze as much money as they can out of this game while they can, until they can move on to their next cash cow. And that is just not going to be sustainable for the player base or the people trying to get by producing content around the game. This happens in mobile games quite often. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last, but it really is quite sad to see a game, I think most people watching this can agree, is very well made in terms of the concept behind it. It's fun to play. Like, I really like this game. If I didn't enjoy this game, I wouldn't have built my whole channel around something I don't enjoy. But eventually it just gets tiring seeing it held back by the short-sightedness and greed of these developers. And I'm sure a bunch of people working on the game feel similarly as to how we do, but unfortunately, those aren't the people making the decisions. So, where does this all leave us? Honestly, I don't know. I'm not sure what else there is to say. I could go on about this more and more, but it'd probably just be repeating myself, and I think I've said really all I have to say on the matter for now. If there are any updates, I'll provide them to you. And in the wake of Second Dinner making stupid decisions that are incredibly unsustainable for people like me who do content stuff, I'm going to use this end of the video segment to promo something I have been working on. I'm pretty passionate about card games in general. I came from Hearthstone, which is where I started content creation, then moved on into Marvel Snap, and as things look more and more unstable in this game, it only makes sense to consider other avenues, especially for creating YouTube content. I still plan on streaming Snap quite a bit. It's something I enjoy doing. And I don't think I'm going to be stopping that anytime soon. However, like I said before, you probably noticed that the YouTube output on this channel has slowed down considerably. That's because, really, outside of news stuff and topics like this, there's just not a lot of stuff worth covering in Marvel Snap, and I really don't think Snap gameplay is something there's a big audience for on YouTube, outside of the 5 people who have already established a decent brand doing that when the game kind of blew up on release. So I'm not going to waste my time trying to do that. It's just not something worth doing. But I do want to pursue other stuff related to card games. And I'm a big enjoyer of Magic the Gathering, and specifically the Commander format. It's one of my favorite things in card games, and as a deck builder, it is actually just by far my favorite format to deck build in out of any card game I have ever played. The first video is still in the works right now. I'm hoping to get it out within the next week or so, but if you're someone who's in the Venn diagram of also enjoying other card games, specifically Magic, and that sounds like something that'd be interest to you, I'll leave a link in the description below for the channel where I'll be posting that stuff. If that's not your thing, no big deal, but in the wake of all this and how this is affecting me personally as someone creating content around the game for a job, this is just something I've thought about for a while, and Second Dinners and Competent Decisions are pushing me to kind of get a faster start on that than I would have initially, because things are not looking good right now. And even if they do somehow pull a rabbit out of the hat to fix things, which, again, I doubt is going to happen, but even if they did manage that, it wouldn't really restore my confidence very much in the content space around this game. It's just going down a path that is not sustainable, and I really need to see some hard proof that that's going to change to really make me reconsider my opinion on that. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the video. The link's in the description if you want to check out the other channel. Video coming soon, hopefully over there. Let me know what you think about all this stuff. I'd love to hear it. I do read all the comments on the videos, and I've been enjoying seeing what everyone has to say surrounding these issues. If you want to see truly just how fucked up of a card Kid Omega is, also leave a link in the description below to KM's video where he showed off some gameplay of the card so you can see just exactly what I'm talking about in the absurd power output this card provides. That's going to wrap it up for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.